Hi everybody, and welcome to this video talking about our fourth learning target relating to a country's power. Power refers to the ability of a country to enact desired policies in order to achieve its interests. So if you recall back to our national interests, economic, security, and ideological, typically the kind of power or the ability for a country to do what it wants to do is always going to come back to those interests. So depending on what kind of interests a country may have, they're going to be able to do a certain amount of fulfilling those interests, and that relates to the idea of power. There are several different kinds of power. The first one being political power. This means that countries already have a pretty large role in the international community. If they're a leader of the United Nations, for example, or European Union, or any other kind of major international organizations. These are the ones that typically have the most political power and considered pretty powerful. For example, the United States, Britain, Germany, these kind of countries have lots of political power as big leaders in a lot of international organizations. How does it make a country more powerful? Because if they were to try to pass a policy in the international sphere, lots of other countries are going to follow their lead because they themselves are pushing forward with this. So therefore, they are going to have lots of power to push through policies and things that they want to see happen because they have that kind of political stance in the world. Military power is the next kind of power that we have, and this is when countries have pretty large, and not only large, but high quality militaries. These are ones that are the most powerful. Another thing to remember about power is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the highest population, but that you are strong in a particular category regardless of your population. So, for example, a country like Israel, while it's very small, has a pretty high military power because they have a high availability of sophisticated weaponry, and they can quickly project their power, meaning that if they need to, they can do something called a show of arms, as we talked about in Tools of Foreign Policy, where they can show, hey, this is what we can do, you better not mess with us. And so other countries are going to be fearful to try to take them on because they know that if they do, they have a lot of military power with a lot of high quality weaponry that can, excuse me, that can stand in their way. So this can really be a very good tool to use if it has to come to that. The next kind of power is technological power, and this is when a country has access to technology, and if they do, that makes them pretty powerful. But what makes a country the most powerful under this technological category is if they can create and export technology. Countries like Japan, for example, have a really high capability of producing really strong technology for cars, computers, software, that kind of stuff. And so when they are able to sell that and utilize their ability to do these kinds of things to other countries, that makes them pretty powerful. And so other countries are going to go to them to say, hey, Japan, we need this kind of technology for this many people, and because they have the resources to produce it, it makes them pretty powerful. Another kind of power is economic power, and this is you'll see this kind of power with countries that have really strong economies, meaning they have a high GDP, they have a lot of trade partners, and they have a pretty diverse economy. So if you look at a country, let's say that has a high GDP and has a lot of trade partners, but really only is like a one pony kind of economy, meaning they only really have one really strong resource, they'll be powerful, but not the most powerful. A country like the US, for example, that has all these characteristics and has technology, other kinds of natural resources, foods, that kind of thing, when your economy is pretty diverse and be able to produce a lot of different things, it makes you that much more powerful. Because not only can you sell and make a lot of money on export taxes to other countries, you can also then have many more things you can sell to many more countries, only strengthening your economic power. Another kind is geopolitical power, and this belongs to countries that are located in key locations in the world. Why? Because if you're located in a certain spot, let's say like a really warm climate, for example, like some of the Caribbean or South American countries, they are going to have access to a lot of valuable resources. Things like coffee and tropical fruit and things that we as a world really indulge in. And so, if you have these valuable resources and are found in some of these favorable climates, it means that you are going to be the most powerful when it comes to geopolitical power because you have the ability to sell these things to other places in the world that could really use it. Places maybe like northern United States, Russia, Finland, and Sweden, and places that are a little bit colder throughout the year. The last one we're going to talk about is national resolve and ideological power. So to think back to our ideological interests, and this is when countries have power when the great majority of the people there are committed to a common goal and they support the actions of their government. So when you have a strong amount of people in the country who support them and care about what the government's doing and all are working towards a common goal, in supporting all the actions of the government, that government is able to do a lot, and that makes them very powerful. And this might seem like not a big deal, but believe it or not, the ability for a country to carry out what it wants to do is a big, big deal in the international world. A lot of countries, especially like North Korea, are bullied into supporting the government, even though the government doesn't really care about them. And so you really want to focus on this kind of power when you're looking at the national resolve, the ability for what a country really is capable of doing. Because how powerful can you be in the international world if your country really can't do as much as it wants to domestically? So that's all for this video, and make sure that you understand all these kinds of powers because tomorrow we're going to be researching how powerful is the US based on these kinds of powers. So hope you enjoyed.